Hey, what's going on, everybody? So we're essentially at the halfway mark for the season. Unless you want to consider the next game, the official, halfway mark. Seeing as how we have a 17 game season now, but considering our record, considering some of our injury circumstances, how we've been seeing players develop or maybe not develop, uh, it's time to definitely start at least considering, taking an eye forward and seeing kind of what our draft options will be. So this video is not necessarily for who those players may be that can come in and provide some better production at the positions we're going to cover, but this is more so which positions, which top three do we need to really make sure that we utilize our draft resources for, and quality, some of those blue chip elite talent players and just kind of how the board's going to fall is definitely going to play a key role. But I think with us looking at a top 10 pick, potentially two, just depending on what happens with Russell Wilson, how his hand continues to progress. If Geno Smith can squeeze out a couple more solid games and maybe get him a few more W's, we're potentially looking at least, I would say, two top 15 picks. This Seattle season, we're getting their first round draft pick in the Jamal Adams trade. It's just not panning out well for them. So for starters, and this is in no particular order, I would definitely say the tight end group for once needs to be somewhat of a point of emphasis. So that position has evolved so much over the years, and we've seen so many different variations of player archetypes, and what those skill sets look like, that and even kind of the evolution and development of how they get groomed over the course of their career. It's definitely changed a lot, and we've seen a huge effect on NFL offenses where a tight end putting up 800 to 1,000 yards isn't necessarily like a foregone conclusion anymore. Darren Waller's been showing out with the Raiders forever and a day. Greg Olsen used to be a huge go-to. Rob Gronkowski for sure. There's definitely a number of examples across the league that we can see where, especially from a blocking tight end perspective, and I kind of think, just with the Robert Saleh tie, the connection with the 49ers, we've watched we watched the tight ends over there essentially be used as blocking tight ends while that receiving skill set kind of gets developed, and it's more kind of yards after catch a little bit because of course they're coming from a West Coast scheme as well. But we're seeing them kind of be able to hit the deep seams and do these different few things. So I think we've kind of pigeonholed ourselves for one with a lot of expired players, I would say. Something to just kind of hold down the fort to really say that we have bodies. I feel like we have camp bodies and not necessarily impact players. And that's essentially the problem. The only real go-to that we can say might be a future bright spot for us is Kenny Yeboah. Tyler Kroft just caught an injury in our game against the Colts where he has lacerated lungs. We're probably not going to see him for a few weeks. We'll see him again towards the end of the season, I'm sure, depending on how things play out. We just traded Daniel Brown, and it leaves the cupboard pretty thin for us. It's not a whole lot of excitement. Kenny Yeboah is literally like the one person that you can go and say, maybe if we can get him some more snaps, during this time period, we can see something. Trayvon Wesco might stick around, but again, he's being played as more like a hybrid fullback role. So we definitely need some resources poured in there. Something where we can get definitely immediate production. I don't know if it's a player that's, 6'6", 280 something yards, crazy wingspan like a Kyle Pitts. Or if it's going to be somebody that's like a 6'2", 250, and maybe they're just kind of bowling over people. But we've had a lot of success previously with Quincy Enunwa kind of being used as like a hybrid tight end wide receiver. So even maybe if we want to get, extremely experimental and find somebody in the mold like that, I think it needs to get done because we're not just going to be able to go to free agency and find us a capable tight end that's going to stick with us long term. Moving over to the defensive side, I just talked about this in the previous video. I think our safety position is definitely going to need a huge influx of talent. Ashton Davis is essentially the only potential long-term answer that we have here, and he's just coming back from injury. So although he did have himself a pretty successful return game, we haven't been able to see any measure of consistency with him across his career so far. It's ironic that, the Jets can't take a break in any way in the injury department. We either get players that come in and they have an injury history and that tends to continue, or we catch players that never had an injury history and then all of a sudden they come here and it's developing. And I'm a bit curious. I can't wait to see if the Jets Atlantic Healthcare Department, probably butchering that, but basically their performance department. With that being revamped, I can't wait to see if they put out some kind of report showing, some kind of data, trends, etc., about how things are improving, not improving. I don't know if it's a turf issue. We don't get a lot of players necessarily that play out of play in cold seasons, necessarily year round. So maybe it can be something like that, right? Your muscles, there's a lot of different factors, but when you're cold, you tend to tense up and things like that more often. And just scientifically, we know that leads to a lot more injury. So that's interesting. But that aside, there's a lot of other players at that position that, I don't think we'll see here. Even going into the offseason, a lot of these players can be replaced, or maybe we'll bring them in as camp bodies and, hope that maybe something works there. But I named a few in the previous video: Gerard Wilson, Sherrod Neeson, Marcus May, we know is out. There's no guarantee that we bring him back, even at a reduced rate. Lamarcus Joyner, he ended up having a season-ending injury. We'll have to see if if he comes back, he performs at a high level. And then Ashton Davis is kind of the wild card here. Maybe we see enough during the offseason to say, okay, we feel good about free safety again. We just need to find a quality backup. And then at least a strong safety position up for grabs still, because it's we don't know. Zane Lewis may have been, and he was kind of playing a cornerback safety hybrid. He was a little bit of a bright spot in preseason, and then he catches an injury. So there's a lot of things, a lot of causes for concern there. Overall, it's just going to kind of be, musical chairs at that position for a while till we find something that we can settle with over the offseason. I do think potentially, just because of the shelf life of the safety position, how the contract talks tend to go, because we've had it now back to back. Jamal Adams, we see him leave, and I'm not using this as a basis to say that we should have locked down players and not locked them down, but just the facts of the matter is, we have the issue with Jamal Adams. He goes, maybe he's not performing up to the standards of his contract. That's doesn't matter. It doesn't apply to us anymore. Marcus May, we have issues with him. We'll see how that ultimately turns out. But the safety position is one that, managers don't tend to want to put a lot of money into. They're just, even at the high levels, it's hard to necessarily have a game in, game out impact there, I would say. When they're on, they're on. And you definitely can do a lot more creative things if you got a free safety that's back there that can shut things down or get takeaways almost, guaranteed, or if you got a strong safety that can pretty much drop people, cause forced fumbles, make those plays in the box, things of that nature. When we did have Jamal Adams, we've seen the sack value we used to get out of him. Aside from that, I would say maybe the last position, and it's a toss-up. There's definitely a lot of other positions there. I struggled to kind of pick one over the other, but the battle was basically going to be between the linebacker core and the offensive line. I think we've seen enough from the quarterbacks to definitely feel comfortable there, and we can definitely continue to add some bodies and strengthen things. But I feel like we definitely have Bryce Hall, who looks like he could be a number one. Brandon Echols has shown to be pretty effective. We still got Jason Pinnock that's shown some good things. Lamarcus Joyner. We've seen some standout performances for sure overall. The linebacking core, we have a lot of youth there, and we've had a lot of hidden gems that we've seen already for sure. And then, of course, we got the stud C.J. Mosley. But at the left and right linebacker position, I think we definitely need to invest a little bit more, even if we do see that somebody continues to stand out. Just having that sense of security, especially after the rash of injuries that we had there, would be great. Quincy Williams was an awesome find. And Jamian Sherwood and Namza Hazardine has looked good in spurts, but there's been injuries to both of them, and that can't necessarily be helped. It's not like they're asking to get injured, but the learning curve at that position, them already transferring from a safety position to linebacker and then jumping to the NFL, it's not like they had a season in college to get seasoned in that role. It's a lot of factors that go into it. Ultimately, I'm going to pick the offensive line though, because that's going to be the bread and butter of us trying to transition to a purely, defensive team where we're asking the offense to be game managers and the defense to shut things down on a week in, week out basis to more of a 50-50 or more of even a 60-40 split, where we see the offense can carry the team. We're just asking the defense not to mess up, or vice versa. I mean, effectively, we want the offense to definitely step up. Even if we end up seeing an average offense above average offense, with the defenses that we've essentially had over the past decade and a half or so, that would be a huge bump in playoff chances, playoff opportunities, trips to the Super Bowl, conference championships, all of those kind of things that we all would definitely look forward to. The offensive line is going to be the crux of that. We know how much Joe Douglas has been trying to invest over the seasons, and I've seen comments here and there about what has he actually improved upon, etc. But if you take a look at how he's been planning to do it, he's invested his first round pick in Becton. We just got AVT or Elijah Vera Tucker. He's looked excellent. Mekhi Becton looked very good in his rookie season. He had some struggles with the switch over in scheme, but he still stood out in the run game. Pass protection was improving, especially after his battles with Carl Lawson. Connor McGovern's improved, but we know he's not going to be the long-term answer. The right side, we just got Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, but he's not going to be a long-term answer either. And then Morgan Moses is kind of a rental, while George Fant, he could be an answer for a couple years, but we still need to try to lock down that position. So there's resources that we need there, and that's just the starters that we're talking about. The backups we still need to figure out. Between injury history and just not being able to see a lot of production out of them, especially in the new scheme, what's that going to look like for us? So ultimately, I think it's going to be more important to make sure we can get a consistent starting solid five on the offensive line, somebody that Zach Wilson can continue to grow with, because he's right now kind of relying on the experience of everybody around him. That's why there's been so many resources allocated to him. In that quarterback room specifically, John Beck, Matt Cavanaugh, we got LaFleur and Saleh there, obviously. Saleh not necessarily an offensive specialist per se, but we have all these resources in there for them. We take a look at the quarterback personnel itself. Mike White might not have been a starter in the league until last week, but he's been in the NFL for a handful of seasons. He's been able to get a lot of scout team reps, be around a lot of great quarterbacks. Joe Flacco, former Super Bowl champion, he's been able to start for a number of years. He's bringing a lot of experience to the room. And then James Morgan, which is just some level of healthy talent, I would say. But it's pretty much a very interesting position to take a look at and dive in. That might be something I look at as well, not to go too far off, but that quarterback room is going to be a topic of discussion, I think, for a while now. 4 quarterbacks in a room, 4 or 5 offensive coaches per se, that's going to be in their ears. Mike White having a hot hand, Zach Wilson kind of struggling beforehand, but seeing how effective the offense can be, and we know that his talent, his raw natural talent and ability, definitely far exceed what anybody else in the room can offer at this point. So that'll be interesting to see. But ultimately, I would love to see us get to a point where, like with the Packers room, with the Indianapolis Colts room, we see a starting 5 unit that can be top 5, top 3. We've had some really good offensive lines in the league. I miss the Nick Mangold days. I know there's a lot of good offensive linemen. Depending on how the draft falls, we can even double down on the tackle and the center. Personally, right now, just from what I've been reviewing, Lindenbaum, I think, is one of my favorites, and I'm definitely a fan of kind of building from the inside out on the offensive line. So having a center there would definitely be a long-term center, I would say. You can't beat it. Other than that, though, let me know what you guys think. Am I like far off base here? Do you guys think that, there's more important positions that we can allocate those resources to? Keep in mind, I'm just talking specifically the draft, not necessarily free agency and any moves that we make there, any kind of crazy offseason trades that come into effect. But though that's pretty much my top three. Again, not in any order either, by the way. But drop your thoughts. Let me know what you guys think, and I appreciate all the support. Peace.